Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are setting the stage for a truly mind-bending journey. We're going to travel deep, and I mean deep, into geological time to explore a totally fascinating question. What exactly remains of us after humanity is gone? We spend so much time thinking about our present and our immediate future, but today we're going to look at our legacy through the ultimate, unforgiving lens of deep time.
So I want you to imagine a incredibly visceral what-if scenario. What if every single human being on Earth suddenly vanished today? No apocalyptic explosions, no giant asteroids, just a sudden, completely inexplicable disappearance of our entire species, leaving our massive automated world running entirely empty. How long would it take for the planet to completely erase every trace of our sprawling civilization?
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, The Great Vanishing. Days, weeks, and years after disappearance. To really understand our geological legacy, we first have to look at the immediate, chaotic aftermath of our sudden disappearance. What happens when the people who keep the machine running just walk away? Well, let's walk through the chronological collapse of our infrastructure. On day 1, things actually look pretty normal. The lights are still on, and automated hydroelectric and nuclear power plants, they just keep humming along. But within a week, without human supervisors to reset routine breakers, massive fail-safes begin to trip, and these sprawling plants shut completely down. Within a month, backup fossil fuel generators fail. In colder climates, heating systems shut down, causing pipes to freeze, burst, and flood buildings literally from the inside out. And within a year, the major grids have entirely failed. Our bustling urban centers become completely dark, cold, and silent. It's crazy how fast the comforts of electricity, heat, and running water fade to black without us at the wheel. But hey, the silence of the power grids absolutely doesn't mean our cities are quiet. In fact, it is pure biological chaos. Starving pets and farm animals break out of their pens and homes, flooding out into the wild. Packs of feral dogs begin to stalk the dark city streets at night. Nature forcefully pushes its way back into the human domain, turning our meticulously planned urban environments into these untamed, post-apocalyptic landscapes. Actually, it looks a whole lot like what we've seen in the exclusion zone of Chernobyl. Moving on to Section 2, Earth reclaims the surface. Decades to millennia later. Let's zoom out a bit further and then see how this builds. As the riots of nature begin aggressively healing the planet, the relentless decay of our infrastructure over the medium term is actually quite staggering. Within just 50 years, water infiltration causes cheap condos and office towers to literally slump over. Steel corrodes, expanding and fracturing the concrete walls holding it all in place. Fast forward to 100 years, and the swaying cables of our magnificent suspension bridges just snap, sending them tumbling right into the sea. By 1,000 years, even our massive cathedrals and monuments, the structures we thought would stand forever, finally topple. And by 10,000 years, the great cities of the world are completely overgrown, becoming buried mounds that are entirely indistinguishable from the surrounding forest and jungle. It turns out even our most heavily engineered modern structures just cannot withstand the sheer, creeping force of weathering and plant life. So does anything actually survive this surface erasure? Well, yes. But ironically, it's rarely our modern marvels of glass and steel. Structures built with ancient masonry, like the nearly 2,000-year-old Pantheon in Rome, which was engineered with this incredible self-healing Roman concrete, they fare much, much better. But the true survivors are things that get buried quickly. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the 5,000-year-old Nap of Howard in Scotland, or the terracotta warriors in China. They were preserved almost perfectly simply because they were hidden underground, safe from the elements. So our best preserved surface artifacts will likely be those that become hidden treasures for future alien archaeologists to dig up. But here's a brilliant little twist. While our skyscrapers fall and our concrete crumbles, humanity's best friend will actually adapt and thrive. The descendants of our surviving pet dogs will evolve back into highly effective pack hunters. You can kind of think of them as dingoes 2.0. They will roam the new wild earth, becoming our most impressive and lasting living flag bearer on the surface of the planet. Section 3, the human stratum. Millions of years later. Now, we are shifting the scale drastically to deep time, moving way away from the relatable decay of surface buildings. Geologist Jan Zalasiewicz poses a profoundly interesting question in his book, The Earth After Us. He asks what legacy humans will actually leave in the rocks. Because over millions of years, tectonic plates shift, the Earth's crust is recycled, and practically everything on the surface gets crushed. Eventually, Everything we are today, all our history, our sprawling cities, our billions of lives, will be compressed into a single, incredibly thin, fossilized layer of rock. This is known as the human stratum. Now, what's really interesting about this is the crucial difference between what we think our legacy is and what actually survives deep time. Direct evidence, like our buildings, our bridges, and our everyday plastic cups, that stuff completely erodes or is destroyed by geological activity over hundreds of thousands of years. But our indirect evidence, well, that's a whole different story. Things like deep underground nuclear waste repositories, strange geochemical anomalies, and highly specific isotopic signatures caused by burning fossil fuels. These microscopic chemical markers get permanently locked into the geological record and can literally last for tens of millions, if not billions of years. Which brings us to an absolutely mind-blowing realization. If the Earth is incredibly efficient at completely erasing all direct, physical evidence of our global industrial civilization, could it have erased someone else before us? If we looked backwards into Earth's deep past, would we even know for sure if an advanced species lived millions of years ago? Section 4. The Silurian Hypothesis. Could another civilization have existed?
This incredible logic flip brings us to a fascinating scientific thought experiment proposed back in 2018 by astrophysicist Adam Frank and climate scientist Gavin Schmidt. They call it the Silurian Hypothesis. Now, just to be absolutely clear here, Frank and Schmidt are not saying that dinosaurs drove cars or built skyscrapers. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a formal thought experiment asking how we would scientifically prove they didn't exist if all their physical buildings are long gone. It's assessing whether modern science actually has the capability to detect an advanced industrial civilization that might have existed, say, 50 or 300 million years ago.
Just a fun little piece of trivia for you. Frank and Schmidt named their theory after the Silurians, which is a fictional race of advanced reptilian humanoids from a 1970 episode of the sci-fi series Doctor Who. Interestingly, when developing their hypothesis, the researchers were surprised to find that science fiction rarely ever explores this highly specific concept of a terrestrial pre-human industrial civilization whose physical artifacts have simply been ground to dust by geological time. Section 5. Signatures of Intelligence. Finding the hidden clues. So if physical artifacts don't survive, how on earth do we find them? Well, scientists like Frank and Schmidt argue that we have to stop looking for buried cities entirely and start looking for highly specific chemical and geological anomalies instead. We need to look for signatures of intelligence. So the crucial point is this. An industrial civilization's true footprint isn't written in its architecture, it's written in the carbon cycle and in synthetic chemicals. If we want to find ancient civilizations, we look for rapid, unusual spikes in ancient temperature records. We look for massive shifts in carbon isotopes that only occur when millions of tons of fossil fuels are suddenly burned. We look for wild perturbations in the nitrogen cycle caused by global agriculture and artificial fertilizers. And of course, we look for long-lasting synthetic pollutants or highly unusual radioactive isotopes that simply do not occur in nature. And here is a perfect real-world example of how this kind of deep-time detective work actually functions. In Oklo, Gabon, there are these natural nuclear fission reactors that were active a staggering 2 billion years ago. Today, none of the original radioactive elements remain at all. They've completely decayed. But scientists know for a fact that fission occurred there because they can measure the exact lingering absence and the highly specific ratios of uranium-235 in the rock. We can detect ancient, massive energy events purely through the ghostly chemical ratios left behind.
Ultimately, Adam Frank points out a pretty humbling reality. No matter what we do to the planet, we're just creating niches for the next cycle of evolution. The Earth is going to survive our Anthropocene era just fine. The climate will eventually balance out, all our plastic will compress into rock, and entirely new life will flourish over the top of our buried cities. The real question isn't whether the Earth will survive, it's whether humanity will manage to stick around long enough to see it.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative question. If the geological record is so incredibly efficient at hiding our ultimate fate, are we truly the first advanced Earthlings to harness the energy of this planet? Or are we just the latest? It completely reframes our fragile place in deep time, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today, and as